What's up, ladies and gentlemen of planet internet? Zach Hval, singer, songwriter, guitar player extraordinaire. It has been a long time since we sat down, you and I, and just did some instructional material. Appreciate you tuning into this. Links to my social medias, my Spotify, live streams, and things like that are down below. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about blues. This is your very first blues guitar lesson. Congratulations. You've taken your first steps into a larger world, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi in the great film Star Wars. Really, what it all boils down to, folks, is rhythm. Now, I know we talk a lot about rhythm guitar on this channel, and that is because it is super important. All of the lickery-doo-dahs and stodly-stadels mean absolutely bupkis if you cannot groove like a banshee in heat in the wild Irish countryside on the electric guitar or the acoustic guitar. But no, in all seriousness, the backbone of blues guitar and blues music as a whole is rhythm. So this first one lesson here, I do plan to do multiple, but this first one here is just going to be about rhythm and feel, because blues is a feeling, folks. And so to get that feel, we need to talk about the shuffle pattern and the time signature of blues music. Now, there are exceptions to this, but in general, it is 12/8. You have 12 bars, and that eighth note gets the beat. What makes blues blues is that we're going to swing those eighth notes, daddy. And so how do you do that? I mean, we can break this down to you in boring music theory, or I can just show it to you rather than tell it to you. There's plenty of guys on YouTube that'll explain boring music theory to you. We like to apply it here, though. So in general, you're going to count it in 4, even though it's in 12/8. Okay, 12/8 is compound meter. Don't worry about it. If you want to know about it, Google it. Okay, but it's compound meter, and I say that mainly to lay the groundwork for the feeling of the blues, which is all in sort of that backbeat. How do you count that? Well, you count it in a blues shuffle pattern. You're going to count it in 4, but I always like to give rather than going into subdivisions and things like that, give people just the simplest way possible to count blues, and that's by just going 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 2, 2, a 3, a 4. See that? You hear that all over any type of blues music you listen to, whether it's big band, Chicago, Delta blues, Texas blues. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 2, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 3, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 4, a 2, a 3, a 4, etc., etc. Or you can do the sort of the cheating way, can you dig it, of counting that out, and that's just saying chew tobacco. Right, instead of going 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, because you can run out of breath doing that, especially if you don't have a metronome to count it out for you. Sometimes you know the battery dies on the metronome, you forget to download the app or something like that, or you just refuse to play with a metronome because you're a psychopath. The way around that is to just say chew tobacco. So demonstration: chew tobacco, chew tobacco, chew tobacco, chew tobacco, chew tobacco. See that? And that is the launching pad, if you will, ladies and gentlemen, of blues music. When Stevie Ray Vaughan is up there just tearing up the Fender Stratocaster, what's Chris Layton on the drums doing? Or even slowing it down. And notice my right hand there. It's very loosey-goosey. Loosey-goosey, baby. So don't get, Robotronic, grease it up. Oil can, like the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz. Ask your great-grandparents about that film. Loosey-goosey blues music, rhythmically speaking, is described as being behind the beat. So where if you're playing with a metronome, you always want to be chasing that beat, if that makes sense. So that's just the basic feeling of the blues. You've got the shuffle feel, and then practice that slow or at a more medium tempo or a little bit fast. Those will help you later on down the line, once you get into more complex things like boogie patterns or Texas shuffles and things like that, it's when you start developing blues stylings and things like that. But that's way in the future. For now that we've got that rhythm down, we have established that we've got 12 bars and that the 8th note is getting that beat, and that 8th note kind of has to swing a little bit, and you know how to count it, and you know how to, I gave you that little device, the chew tobacco device. You've got the basic pattern now, a ground floor, okay? Now let's start building up. Let's build our house of blues. Can you dig it? We're going to start adding some chords. I'm not even going to bother doing a close-up for this, folks. We're just going to keep it in the key of E, and we're going to use tree chords, okay? 3 of them. Wow, so simple. Even a caveman can do it, for those of you that remember that. Then they're all going to be dominant 7 chords. Again, when we're talking about the attitude or the feeling of the blues, it's nasty. It doesn't sound right. It sounds wrong, but it feels right. Can you dig that kind of, activity, as it were? And so they're all going to be dominant 7 chords, for the most part. Again, there are exceptions, but when we're talking just entry-level stuff here, so what is that? That's this E7. Okay, that's your 1 chord. A7 is your 4 chord. B7 is going to be, you guessed it, the 5 chord, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so now we're going to apply that same rhythmic thing here, and we're going to throw those chords on there. Now your basic bread and butter, I'm going to teach you 2 variations of a blues chord pattern. The first one is your bread and butter, like it's all over blues music, and it really is like the launching pad that, guys like Chuck Berry used to launch rock and roll. So it can be used in rock and roll music as well. It's very versatile. That's why I like it so much. And back when I'm practicing lead guitar stuff, or even just not back when, even now when I'm practicing lead guitar stuff, this is the progression I loop the most. And so basically how it breaks down is you're going to get 4 bars of that 1 chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, then 2 bars of the 4 chord. Back to 2 bars of that 1 chord. And then 2 bars of 5, B7. 2 bars of the 4 chord. And then it starts over again. All right? Basic chord progression. So again, that's just 4 bars of E, 2 bars of A, back to 2 bars of E, 2 bars of B, 2 bars of A. Okay? It's math. I must explain it to you. I know, math, we're musicians. But it is important. That's your bread and butter chord progression. So, that's progression numero uno. Numero tuo is basically the same thing. One of the things as you go down the blues rabbit hole for chord progressions you notice is those first 8 bars are the exact same thing. Okay, most of the variations of blues progressions are going to be in those last 4 bars. So when you're listening to the music and you're counting along, I highly recommend you do that. Pay attention to those last 4 bars, because that's where things get interesting. That's where things get spicy. That's where things get tasty. Can you dig it? So, I don't know why I did that. That was weird. The next most common one, just because you can do, again, this sets the ground for lead guitar stuff. You can do turnarounds later on, and it's just fantastic. So again, we're doing that 4 bars of E, 2 bars of A, 2 bars of E, but this is where it gets exciting. We're going to just do 1 bar of the B7, 1 bar of the A7, 1 bar of E7, and 1 bar of B7. That's where your turnaround is going to go. Remember that. So how does that feel? We'll just do the whole progression just so you can, get the idea. So let's begin. 1, 2, 3. Feels So now that you've kind of got the two progressions there to work with, to practice and to listen for, we'll teach you one kind of riff thing. So this is what we call comping, right? So now that we know what our chord progression is, how do we start mutating it to develop, style? Because it's fun to kind of just sit there and but we want to add pizzazz to it. And so the next thing I'm going to teach you, gosh, it's just the most basic thing you can do with that progression, and that's to do some power chords. And it's sort of a riff. A lot of cats will, put this, the bass player will play this. If you're jamming with your friend, one of you will do this, and the other one will just go steedily stoddle away. At least that's how I did it. When I was jamming with my cousin, one of us would do this, and the other one would do some lead guitar stuff. In any case, you're just going to take the very bass part of that E chord. So that would be this low E string, and your pointy finger here on the second fret of that A string. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take Mr. Ring finger here and put them, the fourth fret of the A string. And then depending on your play style, Stevie Ray Vaughan he was all about that ring finger. You're just going to come back to that the fifth fret, of the A string, and then back. And again, it's all under that shoot to back, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4 feel to it. So what that sounds like is, that's all over your one chord, right? That first 4 bars, right? I like to use my pinky because I went to the Eddie Van Halen school of not being afraid to use all of my phalanges when making sweet musical congress for all the boys and girls. And so you take that same concept, okay? You might have already run into this, and you're going to apply it to now that A7 chord. But it's because it's a power chord, it's an A5. Don't worry about the music theory again. We're just talking just skeletons, very basic here. So back down, so you're going to have that open A string, because again, A chord. And then you're going to have that Mr. Pointer finger on that second fret, ring finger on the third fret, or on the fourth fret, and then fifth fret, or Mr. Pinky. Sometimes, depends on how I feel, I interchange these two, but that's just me. And again, that's just 2 bars, so 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 2, a 2, a 3, a 4, back to... And we're just going to stick with that first progression, so we're going to go 2 bars of 2 bars of this one chord. And then you don't have to worry about, if you wanted to make that B power chord, that's just, again, Mr. Pointer finger on the second fret, Mr. Ring finger on the third fret. But you're going to stretch over here with Mr. Pinky. This is where you got to bring in the pinky, okay? So if you're one of those people that's afraid to use the pinky, time to face your fear like a man, or a fierce and mighty warrior, like Hercules or Xena, okay? Be the Hercules or Xena of facing your fear of using your pinky. Can you dig it, ladies and gentlemen? And you're going to, so I got off track there, but Mr. Pointer on the second fret, ring finger on the fourth, and then stretching pinky over to the sixth, and then to the seventh. That can be taxing on your hands. So that's why, in general, I just like to go back to, and this will open you up to doing some, lickery doodahs later on down the line when we're talking more in depth about comping. And then again, And the same thing applies if we were using that other one where, again, the variation. So after the 2 bars of that one chord, it's things like that. So to recap, we have the chew to back, as your bass line, or 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, as your bass rhythmic feel. Okay, you gotta get that sound under your head. Probably the most important thing in this entire video. Everything else is secondary. You gotta have that feel, and you gotta be able to play it fast, or a little bit slower. the next thing you got to do is those 2 progressions again. Your first 8 bars, 4 bars of 1 chord, 2 bars of A, that makes 6, then 2 bars of the 1 chord again, 8. Your last 4 bars where your variation comes from, the bread and butter. After that is going to be, after that 2, back to that 2, after you go back to the 1 chord for those 2 bars, you're just going to do 2 bars of 5, 2 bars of A, okay? And so that's the first pattern. Then again, when we get into the variation, again, those last 4 bars are the most important bars you can listen to in blues music, because that's where your variation comes from, and that's where a lot of fun that's where the fun is, honestly. If we're just being real, between you and me and the NSA and all the other people that are listening to this. So after that, instead of doing, the 2 bars of 1, you're just gonna do 1 bar of that 5 chord, 1 bar of that 4 chord, 1 bar of the E, the 1 chord, whatever key you're in, and then 1 bar of that 5 chord. And then the thing starts over again from here to Timbuktu. Now, that'll conclude this rhythmic, endeavor, but there's some homework for you. Okay, for the series, for the series blues students, I would encourage you to listen to 2 pieces of music. Well, really just get your ears and hands on as much blues music as you can possibly find. There's no shortage of it today in the internet, but specifically for the things we kind of outlined here today, I want you to listen to a song called "Take Out Some Insurance on Me" by the great bluesman Jimmy Reed, okay? Because that'll give you kind of a feel of that riff there with the power chords. Because that's like a lot of what Jimmy Reed does. And again, it's a fairly typical blues pattern. So, you're going to want to listen, if you tune out, if it's not your thing and you're tuning it out, at least come back around to listening to those last 4 bars. And then I would also highly recommend you listen to the song, well, really anything on that album, Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan. That's going to be a slower shuffle than Take Out Some Insurance on Me. But again, just listening to that 1, 2, 3, 4, and paying close attention to those last 4 bars, because that song actually does use that 2nd chord pattern, okay? So thank you so much for sticking with this. This probably is longer than I wanted it to be. That's most of the case when I'm making YouTube videos. But I appreciate you sticking with it this far. Pay very close attention to the future, because we're going to expand our rhythm chops, and then we'll start taking a look at some scales, okay? How do we, solo with these chord changes? How do we start developing that? Of course, the best way, aside from listening to music, is to see this stuff with your own 2 eyes, is to join me every Tuesday night here on this very YouTube channel for Musical Hangout, the ultimate experience in live music. I do a lot of this stuff, and I don't talk to you about it and explain it to you. I entertain you. And of course, links to the music as well. If you don't want to watch and you want to listen to me do this kind of stuff, I got a new album coming out. There are 2 shuffle songs on there and 1 rock and roll song on there that uses that pattern I taught you at the very tippy top of this YouTube video. But that is going to do it for me, Zach Hval, singer, songwriter, guitar player extraordinaire, reminding you that it's lonely at the top, but you eat better. Bread is bread, cheese is cheese. Praise God.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.